Welcome to the final Rubes Fantasy Football Hotline podcast. As always, I'm your host, Mark Rubel, or Rubes, and I will be again talking fantasy football with you for the next hour or so. For my last one, I'll be going solo here. Luke is in vacation or in Michigan for the holidays, so I first want to wish everyone who's listening a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. We finally reached the championship week for most fantasy football leagues. If this is your first time listening to my podcast, I guess it's better late than never. If you're a weekly listener, I thank you for listening to all my shows throughout the fantasy football season. On the podcast this evening, I will start, as I always do, by recapping the studs and duds of Week 15. I'll then list the 5 waiver wire pickups for the week, followed by my breakdowns for all Week 16 matchups. I will end the show by answering the line of questions that have been submitted to me throughout the week. So with that being said, it is championship time. Let's get this show started. So Week 15, fantasy PPR studs for Week 15. Jalen Hurts was the number one quarterback. Yes, the rookie Jalen Hurts at Arizona threw for 328 passing yards, 63 rushing yards, and 4 touchdowns, totaling to 44 fantasy points. The second quarterback, Ryan Tannehill versus Detroit. Tannehill had 273 passing yards, 21 rushing yards, and 5 touchdowns, equaling 43 fantasy points. The number one PPR stud for the running back position, Tony Pollard for San Francisco. Zeke came out late that he was inactive, so Tony Pollard stepped right in, 69 rushing yards, 6 catches for 63 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had 31 points, almost cost me a week if it wasn't for that touchdown from Kyler Murray to DeAndre Hopkins, but I survived Tony Pollard's scare. Second PPR stud, David Montgomery at Minnesota. David Montgomery rushed for 146 rushing yards and 1 catch for 16 yards and finished with 2 touchdowns, 29 fantasy points for Montgomery. The number one wide receiver for the week was Calvin Ridley versus Tampa Bay. Ridley had 10 receptions for 163 yards and a touchdown, finishing with 32 fantasy points. Second wide receiver is DeAndre Hopkins versus Philadelphia. He had 9 catches for 169 yards and a touchdown, totaling to 30 fantasy points for Hopkins. The number one tight end was Darren Waller. Darren Waller versus the Chargers on Thursday night. Had 9 catches for 150 yards and a touchdown, equaling to 30 fantasy points from your tight end position. Now we're going to go ahead to the Week 15 fantasy PPR duds. Derek Carr, the number one dud versus the Chargers again on Thursday night. Only 53 passing yards, but he did leave with a groin injury. 2 fantasy points for him on the evening. So if you start David Carr, I feel bad for you. You're probably not in the championship, but starting David Carr at this point in the season is a risk you're taking at the beginning of the game. So if you start him, I feel bad for you. The next one, Big Ben Roethlisberger at Cincinnati. He thought maybe at Cincinnati on Monday night would be a get-right game for the Steelers and him, but that was not the case. 170 passing yards, a -1 rushing yard, and an interception and a touchdown for Big Ben. Only 9 fantasy points, so if you start Big Ben, you're really looking for him to pick up the pace. It's going to be a hard one in versus Indianapolis this week. I'll talk about that with my breakdown of that game. The number one, or number one dud is Darrell Henderson Jr. versus the Jets. -2 rushing yards, 1 catch and 5 yards, just over a fantasy point for Henderson. He might get more of a look now with Cam Akers out this week. Second running back, Adrian Peterson at Tennessee. Peterson had 23 rushing yards, just over 2 fantasy points for AP. The worst wide receiver was Hunter Renfrow versus the Chargers. Renfrow had 1 catch for 4 yards, just over 1 fantasy point. Number 2 wide receiver dud is N'Keal Harry at Miami. He had 1 catch for 12 yards and just over 2 fantasy points for the Patriots. The worst tight end, I thought was Drew Sample, Cincinnati's tight end versus Pittsburgh. 1 catch for 4 yards, just over a fantasy point. So with that being said, I'm going to now move on to my waiver wire pickups. I've listed my 5 since I'm going solo here tonight. And again, these cannot be over 50% owned. So number 1 on this list, I have tight end Cole Kmet, Bears tight end, 12% owned. This is his second straight week he's been on this list, but I really think he can win you a matchup for a championship as the Bears visit Jacksonville. Number 2 is the defense, Houston's defense, 17% owned. They face the Bengals at home. I think this is a streaming defense that could help you win a championship week. Number 3, running back Dare Ogunbowale, Jacksonville's backup. He's 0% owned, but watch James Robinson, see if his injury will keep him out. If he does, this is a start for you versus the Bears. I know it's a tough defense, but starting running back could maybe provide dividends as a flex or RB2. Number 4 on the list is wide receiver Travis Fulgham for the Eagles. I know he was a big contributor earlier in the year. 27% owned. Maybe with Jalen Hurts, he can find some of that magic he had during the year. And to round out my waiver wire pickups was running back Ito Smith. Now the lead back in Atlanta. They've kind of moved on from Todd Gurley. So Ito Smith's 4% owned. Those are my 5 waiver wire pickups at this point in the year. It's kind of slim pickings, but I think the first 2, Kmet and the Houston defense, could really help you win a week and bring you home a championship. My position rankings, as I do every week, those are posted on my group page. Again, Rube's Fantasy Football Hotline on Facebook. You can check those out. And brings me to my next segment here. I'm flying through today's podcast, but when I'm solo, it's easier to do that. First game Friday night, Christmas, 3:00. We have the Vikings at the Saints. A couple injuries for the Vikings. Alexander Madison is questionable with a concussion. Tight end Kyle Rudolph is doubtful with a foot injury. He's been out the last couple of weeks. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I'm hoping for my sake that Justin Jefferson gets involved a lot. I know Saints defense is difficult, but I think they'll do a good job of stopping Dalvin Cook. So I'm hoping Justin Jefferson could be a big factor there. Some owners who have Alvin Kamara, he hasn't been himself, and that's shocking. But at the same time, last week Breeze was back. I'm hoping that Kamara is more of himself, at least for the Saints purposes, because if they're going to go anywhere in the playoffs, they need Kamara. So I look for the Saints to get Kamara involved even more this week. So if you have Kamara, be patient. Hopefully he'll end up winning a championship for you. But that should be an interesting matchup on Christmas. So if you have some time, watch some football with the fam. Moving on to Saturday games. 3 games on Saturday. We have the Buccaneers at the Lions. A couple injury notes out. We have wide receiver Kenny Galladay out with a hip injury. We have running back Ronald Jones out with COVID and a finger injury. So those are 2 main fantasy plays that are out. I see the Lions struggling in this one. I think the Buccaneers look to really get momentum before heading into the playoffs. I think Leonard Fournette could be a really solid option here if you're in need of a running back position. I know he's probably not available, but if you do have him, I think he's a must start. It's difficult with the Buccaneers wide receivers because really any of them can go off, and we just don't know which one it'll be. So, but you're starting all those 3 at the Lions. Marvin Jones for Lions and DeAndre Swift are 2 guys to watch out for. And then TJ Hawkinson, he's been consistent all year. So I look for Marvin Jones, Swift, and Hawkinson to be starters for the Lions. Moving on, the 49ers and the Cardinals. For the Cardinals, Raheem Mostert is out with a high ankle sprain. Deebo Samuel also doubtful with a hamstring. George Kittle might be back. That came out. He's questionable with the foot injury. I'm not sure if he's going to be active for this one. If he is, that's a huge boost if you kept him on IR. Chase Edmonds I see as questionable with ankle knee injury. So if you do have Kenyon Drake, he might get more of a run in this one. But this one, it can kind of go either way. I expect the Cardinals to win, but you never know. CJ Rutherford is starting for the 49ers. So I think Ayuk's going to have a big game for the 49ers. I think Hopkins should have a big game. I do think Justin Wilson should have a big game with Raheem Mostert out. Whenever he gets a chance to start, he seems like he has a pretty good game. So if you're an option where you need a running back and Jeff Wilson's still there, I think he should have a pretty solid game this week. And I'm hoping Kyler Murray and Hopkins can get it going again. My team kind of relies on them, and hopefully they can carry me home to a championship this week. The last Saturday night game, Dolphins at Raiders. Myles Gaskin is active. He had COVID last week, but he is going to be active this week. Devontae Parker, we're not sure. He's questionable with a hamstring. And tight end Mike Gesicki is questionable with a shoulder injury. So really no Raiders injuries that we know of. This should be a game really where high-scoring game. I think the Dolphins defense could provide you with a solid start versus the Raiders. But I think it's a solid game to start Josh Jacobs. I think you're in a pinch, you're going to start Aguilar. It's so hard with him because he has been productive, but at the same time, I'm not sure how confident you're going to be starting Aguilar in a championship game. So that's kind of up to you. I really don't see Dolphins receivers starting. If you held on to Gaskin, I think he could be a good play for you. But I think Jacobs and Waller, the usual ones in this matchup. Moving on to the Sunday games, the noon games, the Falcons at the Chiefs. Julio Jones questionable with a hamstring injury is all I know of there. This should be another high-scoring game. There's no Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's another injury I forgot to mention. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is out, so I look for Le'Veon Bell to really have a Le'Veon Bell type game maybe versus the Falcons. I know he's been not the best this year, but if he's going to get the full slate of carries, I think he could provide a lot in the passing game, especially versus the Falcons. Falcons aren't very good, so Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. I think Le'Veon Bell could be a start this week. And then I'd stay away from the Falcons running back. Ridley's a start, and if Julio Jones is playing, he's obviously a start. If you have Hayden Hurst, he could be a flyer with the tight end, but he's kind of been inconsistent this year. Next game, Browns at the Jets. This is kind of be a snooze fest here. I don't really like anyone on the Jets. I like the Browns defense here. I like Chubb. I like Hunt. And I think the Browns would be up pretty quick. So if you have Landry, I think he's a good start. I would just be scared if the Browns really blow it open early. So I do like the Browns running backs. They seem to be a running football team, and it's worked for them this year. So I don't see them getting away from it in this game versus the Jets. Colts at Steelers. Running back James Conner is questionable with a quad injury. Seems like he's questionable every week, but he is questionable with a quad injury. Even if he plays, he is he's got a rough matchup. So I don't know if I'm playing James Conner. Big Ben's been struggling. The wide receivers have been struggling for really the Steelers offense has been struggling. So I would kind of stay away from them. Johnson, you're playing, obviously. Juju's been struggling, but the Colts side of the ball, rookie Jonathan Taylor really has been impressive to me. It's a tough Steelers defense, but I think Taylor can, or I'm hoping Taylor can stay hot. I think T.Y. Hilton has came on strong as of late. I think Hines is going to get a lot of catches in this one. I think this one's going to be a close game. I think the Colts are going to rely on dump downs to Hines. So if you have Hines, I think Hines is going to be the one to play in this matchup. I know Benny Snell filled in for James Conner last week, but I don't see him having a good game against the Colts defense this week. Bears at Jaguars is the next one. James Robinson is questionable with an ankle injury. Cordell Patterson's questionable with a knee injury, but he is not fantasy worthy, so I would not. I would not start Cordell Patterson in anything if you have him or think of starting him. Probably not the right move. James Robinson seems like he's going to play. Um, it sounds like they're going to rest him in practice, but he is going to play. I mentioned at the beginning to pick up Ogungwale. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but their backup. Kind of play it by ear. I think the Bears' offensive players, you're going to start everyone. Montgomery, Allen Robinson, Cole Kmet, I think is going to have a huge game. And then Mitch, if you're in need of a quarterback, I think the Bears stay hot here and win this one big versus the Jaguars. Giants and Ravens next. I look for the Ravens to stay hot. They know they have to win, pretty much win out to make the playoffs. So I like the Ravens here. I like Dobbins. Sorry, my dog is just going crazy. So I like Dobbins here in this one. I like Gallman. I'm going to have to put this on hold. Sorry, guys. I'm going to have to postpone this. My dog's going crazy here, so I'm going to have to take care of that. I hate to cut this short, but I gotta run here. My dog's going crazy, so I apologize, guys, to cut off short. I'll keep you guys updated, kind of what I'm going to do. I do want to have this podcast, but my dog's going crazy, and I do have to go get him. So I apologize last minute here to postpone it. But kind of look up on my Facebook, and I will keep you guys posted as to what I'm going to do for this. So I apologize I couldn't get through this, guys. Hope you understand. Look for my Facebook post. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in. It's been a crazy year. I really hope everyone appreciated my advice. Again, I'll post something on Facebook. I'll answer you guys' questions on Facebook that I did receive. A couple of bold predictions before I leave. I'll do that. I'll just kind of ignore the rest of the games. I'll go through the bold predictions here. I have number one bold prediction: Dalvin Cook will be held to single-digit fantasy points at New Orleans. David Montgomery will finish as the number one running back at Jacksonville. 2 Buccaneers will finish over 100 receiving yards at Detroit, and neither quarterback in the Colts-Steelers game will finish over 20 fantasy points. And my last is Washington's defense will finish with more than fantasy points than any offensive player for Washington. Again, I will answer the questions I received on my Facebook group chat or group page. So look for that in there. Again, I want to thank everyone who listened to my podcast through this crazy fantasy football season. I hope everyone who tuned in to my podcast had a successful fantasy football season. And I wish you guys the best of luck if you're playing the championship this weekend. As always, go win your matchups and thank or hate me later. Thank you, guys.